Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Love and Lattes. I am the self-love scientist, Victoria, and I have an amazing guest with me today, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us today. Brian is a former police officer and instructor, a business owner, and a fellow podcaster. He describes himself as remarkably unremarkable. Everyone give Brian a hello. Hello, Brian. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me, Victoria. I'm very honored to be one of your first guests.
Yes, we met in that really great our podcasting group, right?
Yes, we did. We did. And I suckered you into recording with me. And so now we're doing this. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, Brian, I'd love for you to kind of share with the audience a little bit about your passions and if you're willing to open up more about your origin story and what inspired you to become unremarkably remarkable.
No, remarkably unremarkable.
Oh no.
Completely different.
Oh no. Oh no. Remarkable. You're remarkable, Brian.
Yeah. Okay, so to go to understand my origin story, so to speak, we have to go back probably 24, 25 years. Okay. And that's back when I was actually a police officer. And I found myself in a position where I was laying in bed at night and I would toss and turn back and forth, knowing I had another shift coming up. And so I'd roll over, look at the glow in the dark red alarm clock, literally watching the minutes tick by, or looking up at the ceiling. And as I say, I can still trace the outline of the water stain that we had in the corner of our ceiling. And I just remember laying in bed and knowing one of two things. Either I was going to continue on in policing, regardless as to how stressed out I was, because I had the safety of a salary. It wasn't a great salary by any stretch of the imagination, and we weren't even getting by without help from both sides of our family. But if I was going to continue on with doing that, I was going to take my own life, and I know that I was going to do that. I'd actually watched a person when my dad, and him and I are at odds very often, but I took this. He told me when I first went into policing to pick two people who really had it together and fashion your careers after theirs. And so the one guy I chose ended up going on to be the chief of police. He was water off a duck's back kind of guy, always super positive, amazing. The other guy just loved how he policed, and he really seemed like he had it all together. And 1 year in, and I say fortunately, but it was while I was away on holidays, he took his own life in our locker room. And this was a guy that I had thought had it all together. And he saw this as his only way out of what the career had done to him. And I knew that was going to be the road that I was going to go. I had a wife. I had two young daughters. At the time they were, 2 and an infant. And by the time I left, they were 3 and 1. And or I could leave policing, not know any idea of what it was that I was really going to do. And obviously it's, 2024 and I'm still here. So I chose route B. And but that's kind of my origin story. I tell people I got involuntarily thrust into entrepreneurship doing the PTSD from the job, and it hit me quick. I was only a police officer for 5 years, and it hit me after like 3. And so that was, So I had to learn how to become an entrepreneur. I didn't know anyone who owned a business. Um, and I had to learn by myself how to do all of it. And so now my focus is on helping others who have hit that mental health PTSD wall, who really need to get out of their careers regardless. I have a special place in my heart, right, for first responders, but regardless, I want to help them compress that learning curve so that they can quickly move beyond and move into a more successful, rewarding entrepreneurial related career.
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. That was a wonderful and courageous story to share, and I truly appreciate you being vulnerable in this moment.
You're welcome. It's just, people need to understand what people are going through, and so that, and I explain to people, I say I'm remarkably unremarkable, because there are billions of people out there like me who are going through this, right? And so I don't want people to look at me and go, oh, he's so remarkable, as you said, right? That he's the exception to the rule. No, I am the rule. You can move on, and there is life beyond it. You just have to make that choice to do so.
What would you say in that moment, from when you recognize that when the role that you were looking up to into your future, and he had passed away, and you had to make that decision between, like, it's either like you had this knowing that this was something, it's like you were seeing yourself in him, and the other route was to go towards entrepreneurship. What was the real, like, would you say, trigger or like pivot to that entrepreneurial? Because I feel like it's scary to kind of go into that unknown space of running your own business, especially with having your two girls and your wife just to at home.
My wife, she's marvelous. She's amazing. We're still together. And we're coming up on 28 years now. I have two lovely, wonderful daughters, both adults now. And the big thing was, I knew that if I did it financially, my wife and daughters were never going to be taken care of. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. We'd made that conscious decision because we thought that it was important. Obviously, it's each person's decision as to how they look at that, but that's the decision we made. But I knew as a result, they were never going to get beyond the poverty line for a long time. Not degrading anything in terms of my wife and her skill set, because she's absolutely amazing, but there was nothing for her to fall back on that she was going to be able to do. So it was my responsibility. And as badly as I wanted to actually take my life, I didn't want to ruin theirs. And I didn't even look at it in terms of what it would be like for them to grow, to go on without a dad. It was the fact that they were not going to be financially taken care of. That's where my focus was as the provider. And I now know, like, I know what my children have been through just in terms of life in general. And I'm very happy I've been able to be there to help guide them. And it was so much more than financial. But at the time, that was the determination.
And then when you recognize that you had that passion to support others who were also going, would you say you're helping those who are in that moment of, like, looking at crossroads A and B? Or would you say you're helping them with the ones who have chosen B to move forward, but they're experiencing those levels of PTSD?
Well, I think, first of all, what I've got to state is I'm not a therapist. Okay. So I can't tell you where you're at. And to call and talk about your emotions with me, I'm not going to be able to help with that. Okay. But I am literally dealing with people who are at that choice. And the code that we have is I get texts from people more frequently than I would hope for. But the code is literally, can we go for coffee? And I know what's going on with them as soon as I see one of those texts. And I can't say no, I can't say maybe later, I can't say I'm busy. And so we talk about options. And the only options I talk about are the fact that it is never an option where your family is better off to not have you around.
Mm.
And I know that. So now what I want to do is I help them to figure out what that second option is going to be going down that entrepreneurial route.
That's wonderful. It takes someone generous and compassionate to hold that space. Thank you for doing this.
Well, you're very welcome, but it's part of my duty. I know it sounds stupid, like my origins story and my duty and but we need to help each other, especially in moments of weakness, especially when I can directly relate to those feelings that they're having when they can't even talk to their spouse about it. And in a lot of ways they're ashamed because they feel like this is a weakness. It's still, even though we're literally 2.5 decades later, it's still frowned on. It's still looked at as a weakness, especially amongst first responders, because we are, impenetrable, dominable alpha personalities, right? And nothing affects us. And when you admit that something is affecting you, you're looked at differently. And as I tell people now, that the greatest strength anybody can ever have is having the strength to admit that when they're weak.
Mm. So like, give me like chills. But
Sorry.
no. I think in order for us to grow as human beings is to express those vulnerabilities and seek, like, asking for help is actually one of the greatest strengths and also the hardest things to do.
Yes.
Reaching our hands out. And in your opinion, and then maybe from your experiences from the spaces you've held, have you noticed a pattern as to why it might be difficult for those to reach out? Do you think it's kind of directed towards that alpha, like these alpha, like you said, you called it the alpha mentality?
Well, it's I guess, sorry, I'm stuttering. The issue that you run into, and I think it's regardless of career, right, is the fact that the second you admit weakness, two things are going to happen. And this is what was going on in my head. One was, everyone's going to think I'm crazy and I can't be trusted anymore. Okay. I'm going to be looked at differently in the locker room or at the the water cooler or the coffee room, however you want to look at it. People are going to look at me differently. And also the sharks are in the water, right? Because whether you're in a corporate career or you're in a public service or whoever you want to look at it, private, public, whatever it is, a lot of our income is derived from promotions and everything. And so you've got to hide this from your competitors, your coworkers, so to speak, but you've also got to hide it from your superiors because you're less likely to get promoted as a result. So admitting weakness is actually a financial concern also.
Wow. How often would you say you receive that text message for getting coffee?
Probably at least once a month. That I'll get that. Sometimes I directly get phone calls. It's and as more and more I get to meet more and more officers, they are just, hey, do you have a minute for a quick chat or whatever? And these are officers I know, so I will go and sit down with them, obviously. It's a little different with people that I work with, because my immediate questions are you safe, and do you need to speak to someone right away?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if there's you know life-ending thoughts going on in your head, then you either need to get yourself to a hospital, you need to call the suicide prevention hotline or something like that. You need to speak to somebody, you need to speak to your therapist, you need to take action to make sure that you are immediately safe and that your family's safe at that moment, because we don't want you to do something stupid that is ever going to be a regret for everyone and everything around you.
And as you continue this journey and in the past up to this moment now, how do you yourself integrate like breaks or spaces so you can catch up with yourself? Because it's a lot to take on this, I imagine.
I'm fortunate in the fact that I enjoy work. I'm also I'm unfortunately fortunate. How's that as well? Because I have health issues, and so I have to shut it down at a certain point. Otherwise, I will make myself very sick. So if I do need to just take a break, I will just go and I will decompress and just be like, no, I need this time, because otherwise I will go until I do make myself very ill, and that's not a benefit to anybody, whether it's my clients or my family or me.
I want to circle back to, I would say in this conversation and then in some of my private containers when I work with men, they've used that word alpha before. And I'm wondering, whether you're working in corporate, you're a service responder, government official in some form of leadership, and you have this mindset of I need to be, it's like alpha or literally alpha or die almost. And what would you say is where do you think they're getting this from?
Society, upbringing. Obviously we can get in the nature versus nurture debate. I'm not a scientist. I can't talk to you about the nature, but I was raised that way by my father. It's you don't admit that there's an issue, and eventually my dad ended up having to check himself into a psych ward. It was fortunate my mom found him as he was laying his goodbye letter on the table. But you did not admit weakness, and it's just it's the way that society looks at those positions, but it's the way we're perceived, but it's the way that we also perceive those roles, right? It is myself, I look at it as I'm a leader. I stand out and I lead, and as a leader, I cannot admit that I'm having a bad time. Whether you're leading your family, you're leading your squad, whatever it is, there are people who look up to you, and you have to put on this persona of perfectness.
I feel like, have you heard people say, I don't have time to get sick? Or
yeah,
like even in the movies, there's a line from, oh my gosh, like the original Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he's like, you're bleeding. And he goes, I ain't got time to bleed. And it's
nice.
And it's just one of those things where it's like when you really think about it, and I know I myself, I like have experienced levels of burnout, and I would sit there in my bed like feeling nauseous and being like, I can't get sick. And it's literally our body's response to say, you need to slow down. What would you say is a for like not just myself, but any other new entrepreneurs, or again, like the folks in the service industry, corporate, when they start experiencing these levels where they're really pushing themselves beyond what they can mentally handle, emotionally handle, what would you say is some things that they can take into consideration, or maybe some personal habits that would help them like kind of dial back and help them bring back to
Well,
themselves?
you need to find an outlet, whatever that's going to be. If it's going to be reading, if it's going to be meditation, if it's going to be working out, or whatever it's going to be, going for a walk, literally laying out in sun tanning, or, you need to find some way to decompress. And it's got to be something that you enjoy doing, where you feel a sense of calm. And some people get that from the endorphin rush, right? From working out, or whatever it's going to be. But you need to find something that you like to do and make sure you take time to do it.
Mm. And I know people who are listening, I know you're listening to this and you're probably thinking, I hear you, I don't have time. And what would you
But
say to that? What do you say to that?
well, I can say, if you don't think you have time, I want you to take a week and put together a calendar and break it up into 15-minute increments for 24 hours for 7 days. And I want you to leave every single space white where you really didn't do anything of any purpose.
Mm.
Okay. And then all of a sudden you're going to realize, wow, I actually did have time there. Right. And it's the same thing we do with people in business, where they're like, well, I don't have time to get to this, but you just spent 15 hours doing literally nothing. But it still stressed you out because you were doing whatever it was instead of just detaching, right? And just take 15 minutes and detach. You know, I am the world's greatest napper. If I need a nap, I will take it. I will tap out, and I'm just like, and I just go and I grab a quick nap, and then I wake up and I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go again.
Absolutely. I started taking naps this year, actually, and I used to be like, I don't have time for naps, but I swear, like 15, usually it's a 30-minute to an hour power nap, and I feel like it's a whole new reset for my nervous system.
Yep. Yeah, I had one today. It was awesome.
I love that. And then for you, for your business and the way you're holding space for others, what's going to be next for you? What is something that you're really looking forward to as we wrap up 2024 and enter 2025? What is something you were looking forward to? And then my follow-up question to that is, what would you like to see change in this kind of alpha mindset for men?
Um, I guess, what am I personally looking forward to? I'm looking forward to a meeting I'm having down in Texas in a month with a gentleman by the name of Jim Cathcart. People, if you look him up, the guy's an absolute living legend. I'm looking forward to getting together at his summit with a group of incredible individuals. I'm so pumped that I'm even being given the opportunity to go. I don't understand why Jim's allowing it for me to attend, but I am very grateful. So that is definitely something that I'm pumped for. Another thing is that I'm working on. I've been given the opportunity with the group to head up to create a full ecosystem where we're going to be attacking um, the inherent problems in first responders, their careers, their lives, those types of things. So we're just in the process of putting the foundation together for that. And I'm absolutely thrilled that I've been asked to help head up this entire group. And one of the things we're going to be focusing on is mental health, right? Because it's so important, right? And so what do I want to see different in 2024 and beyond? I am I allowed to swear? Am I not allowed to swear on
Yes,
this?
sure.
Okay. I'm sick and tired of the lip service bullshit
Mhm.
that that um is being paid to mental health, regardless of career. Okay. Um the it's 2.5 decades later, and it's only lip service. Really, what it comes down to is we don't want you to be our problem anymore. It's not that we want to help you find a solution. It's that we just want you to become somebody else's problem, not ours, is what it comes down to. And so when you eventually hit that point where you have to, as I say, tap out of your career, and on my podcast we talk about life's pivots, right? You have to pivot and do something new. Um, you know, what happens is people who have admitted that they need help, they get dropped like a hot potato, and you're just left struggling, looking up, going, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. And we've got to quit saying that we're helping these people when we're still not. And we actually have to really start helping them.
And what would you say that could look like, or what would you like to see that look like?
Well, I think it has to start very early. Because I've got a good friend of mine. His name is Kyle Goodnight. So there's shout out to Kyle. Um, he's done a very large study in relation to this, how it even goes back to our upbringing and family dynamics, things that have happened to us as children that have been left unresolved. And so it goes back to upbringing. It becomes our responsibility with our children that we're having to make sure that we're raising them properly. And no, you need to determine what's proper. But in my opinion, they need to understand that they need to have a safe space to come to when they say, I'm having an issue. And you don't give them the crap of you don't know what problems really are. You're still in high school, and or whatever it is, you're in junior high and somebody just called you fat, or you don't know what that's really like. Well, you know what? That's traumatizing.
Mhm.
I had a friend of my brother told me I looked like a thumb when I was growing up. And I still remember it almost 45 years later. That's how much that statement affected me, you know? And so we need to be nicer to each other. Um, it just, there's so many aspects to it, but especially in once you're into the career, you need to be able to reach out, ask for help, and have no bearing on your future in the job. And you need to be supported by that job if you need to get out. They helped make you that way, and they need to help assist you for you to move on instead of dropping you and going, you're somebody else's problem now.
That was very well said. Thank you, Brian. So we're getting to the very end of our episode for today, and to be honest, we're gonna sync up and have another conversation because mental
I'd
health
love to.
is very, very that's I think one of the passions that we shared. Uh,
Yes.
and then our own history of being in the field, especially with police officers, running on the ambulance. So what I'd love to do is, are you still open to connecting with people who may be in need or looking for assistance?
Yes, most definitely. They can, my website is MyMentoring.guru. They can reach out to me. Please understand once again, that's not in terms of the mental health assistance itself. I can possibly help try and find you local resources. That's one of the things that we are in the background putting together, that foundation for this. Excuse me, sorry. They can reach out to me there. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Facebook. Allegedly, I have an Instagram account, but I don't think I've looked at it in forever. But reach out. I will do my best. I do coach people with this, but my goal is to not find new clients. It's really to help people find new careers and help them get there.
Amazing. I love that. And everyone who's listening, we will have all of Brian's information, his links and resources in the additional show notes today. And Brian, before we wrap up, is there anything you'd love to drop or share with us that we haven't highlighted yet?
Really honestly, no, because it's not, honestly, I don't mean this the wrong way, Victoria, but it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us being able to help people. And I guess if I was going to drop one final thing is take a look at how the way you treat people and how that affects their mental health. And are you adding to their life or are you subtracting from their life? Are you making it harder on them? And quit being an asshole about it. If you are, stop. Become part of the solution instead of continuing to be the problem.
I agree. You treat others as you want to be treated. And that quote, that phrase goes back for a very long time. However,
Yes.
I feel like it's something that we tend to forget, especially in a very fast-paced, hardworking kind of society that we live in, where it's all about competition over community. And I feel that we're here to kind of bring that back.
Yes. And if we have to do it one episode and one person at a time, then we do. But if you can help make one other person's life better, why would you not want to do that?
Exactly. This has been lovely, Brian. Thank you so much for being on the Love and Lattes podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I truly appreciate you sharing your story. And for everyone listening, really looking forward to the launch of this community of resources to become this advocate in terms of health, especially for our medical responders and police officers and corporate, what would you call them? Like corporate workers, corporate leaders? Anyway.
Really, it's for anyone who needs help is really what it's got to become. And it's our responsibility to help each other. Even if we are in competition, right? It's still our responsibility to lift up the people around us. It's not our responsibility to keep them down. That is just a horrible perspective that just that is what should not be tolerated in society.
Yes. We should be getting our energy and fulfillment out of lifting ourselves and others up.
Yes.
And it's going to make a huge difference.
I agree.
Amazing. Thank you, Brian. I could keep talking to you, but I know we're like over. So again, thank you, Brian, so much for for being a guest on the Love and Lattes podcast.
Well, you're very welcome, Victoria. You have such a great soul. I love chatting with you, and anyone who gets the opportunity to work with you is truly going to benefit. They need to reach out to you because I know you provide a lot of help and a lot of good for people.
Thank you, Brian.